One of the most recent additions to Spiral Abyss content has been the Wayob Manifestation. This enemy has caused quite a bit of grief when it comes to clearing Abyss in a reasonable time frame, largely due to its shield mechanics. In this video, I'll be discussing ways to counter its mechanics, and in some ways, outright deny them. Before we can discuss how to counter these enemies, we first need to understand them. There are 6 different types as of version 5.5. Hydro, Cryo, Pyro, Geo, Electro, and Dendro. Only Animo being the odd one out. Excluding the local legend variants for these enemies, each of them has 4 different attack patterns they can utilize. Let's go over the attack patterns the Hydro version can use first. It can summon a Whirlpool, which drags the player towards the center, culminating in a Bubble Explosion, which deals Hydro AoE damage. It can also summon a small bubble separately, which also explodes several seconds after being summoned. Moving on to Cryo, this Wayob can rain down icicles on the field, dealing Cryo damage in the AoE. It can also summon the Blizzard, dealing Cryo damage in a cone in front of it. Pyro Wayobs have an airstrike attack, where Pyro beams will rain down from the sky, 1 at a time for 6 total instances. They can also fire 9 homing missiles at the player, dealing Pyro damage. For the Geo Wayob, its first attack summons rocks that deal Geo damage in an X area surrounding it. Its second turns it into a Beyblade, dealing physical damage if the player gets hit. For its third, it marks a rectangular area, dealing physical damage after channeling for a few seconds. As for the Dendro Wayob, it can also lock onto the player, firing a Dendro Pulse that expands outward 3 times, and also poison an area, dealing damage over time if the player stands in it. Finally, we have the Electro Wayob, which was recently released in 5.5. Its first attack summons 5 Electro Orbs that spring around it, which eventually explode. It can also spin itself, while also calling down 6 lightning bolts on the circumference of its spin range. Finally, it summons lightning strikes in a wave-like manner. Unlike the other Wayobs, the Electro Wayob also has the ability to teleport to the player if they happen to be too far away. And that's it for unique patterns for each Wayob, so let's move on to shared patterns. Every Wayob, besides Geo and Electro, is able to do a beam attack. This attack deals said elemental damage in the line and has a short channeling time. Now for the most infamous aspect of these Wayobs, which is their energy drain mechanic. Once you start to fight them, they make a big show with their wings as if they're peacocks, and then proceed to remove your ability to use your elemental bursts, while also generating a shield. They will then deal their respective elemental damage in a X-shaped AoE around them until either this attack pattern has been used 3 times, or the shield is broken. The non-elemental shield that is first generated has a total health equal to 111.4% of the Wayob's max HP. It takes 120% increased damage from all characters, with Natlan characters receiving an extra 60% damage increase. Natlan racism is real. Destroying the non-elemental shield before the Wayob can convert it generates 90 elemental energy in the form of particles, which can then be affected by the energy recharge stat. This downs the Wayob for 5 seconds before it starts to attack again. Failure to remove the non-elemental shield in time allows the Wayob to convert whatever shield remains to an elemental shield, matching the element the Wayob is associated with and ending the energy drain effect. This shield then operates like most other elemental shields, requiring application of certain elements to take it out. While the Wayob will be stunned after the elemental shield is removed, it will not generate the energy like it did with the non-elemental shield. Now that we're aware of what these Wayob's attack patterns are, let me show you how to counter them. Outside of the energy drain effect that it does, all of their attacks can be easily iframed or dodged. The AoE for their attacks is pretty well telegraphed, and so it isn't too hard to avoid getting hit. Timing regarding this is also fairly forgiving. The energy drain mechanic is by far the most aggravating aspect of their design. There is one character who can outright ignore it, being Mavuika, as her ult charges off a fighting spirit rather than the standard energy mechanics the game has. She's also immune to any other energy drain mechanics pre-5.5 enemies have, which is kinda crazy. Outside of this one exception, everyone else will lose their burst the moment the non-elemental shield is raised. To counter this, one can cast their burst in the short delay before the shield is raised. While you still have to contend with the amount of HP the shield has, at least your damage source is on field rather than in the trash can. The energy drain mechanic does also have a limited AoE, so you can just stand outside of it and wait until the Wayob stops and converts its shield. However, this isn't very practical for Abyss, as one already needs all the time they can get to reach 36 stars generally. For Abyss specifically, there's a reliable method to stagger the Wayob and prevent it from casting its shield mechanic. If you break its pose, the moment its wings are lowered down, you can stagger it, as shown here. This requires an ability that deals a high amount of poise damage, such as Bennett's Burst or Shincho's Burst activation. After discussion with Fru and ML on this topic, it seems that you need a minimum total of 210 poise damage to break the Wayob's pose. Genshin Wiki has the amount of poise damage abilities can deal available for every character, so if you want to see if the characters that you own can perform the stagger, I suggest looking there. This window is also fairly short, on the order of, I would say, 5 frames or so. I'm not very accurate at frame counting, so do forgive me if this is not accurate. Missing the window will result in the Wayob not being staggered and you suffering from a lack of energy. While this does avoid the damage loss resulting from having to take out the non-elemental shields, or time loss from waiting it out, it can be really difficult to hit this window consistently without practice. Based on my testing, there is also a 20 to 30% chance that the Wayob immediately recasts Moment of Trial, which is its shield mechanic, if it isn't continuously staggered. Casting Burst early or staggering the Wayob are the best methods currently to actively deal with this mechanic. Keep in mind as well that the Wayob in Abyss has a 5-second delay between spawning and activating Moment of Trial, so decide early on which method you want to use and stick with it. And that concludes my overview on Wayobs. It's likely there will be one more Wayob to represent Animo that will be released in the future. I'll put a pinned comment in the description describing their abilities and effects, but it's just as likely that they will operate on a similar wavelength to the ones currently released. This also means that the methods to counter them will also be similar, so everything in this video should still be useful to deal with them. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if there's anywhere I can improve, and if you'd like to see more videos like this one. This is Tars, signing off. See you next time.